For January 21st, I'd like to ask Supervisor Curmudgeon Mike Lynch to lead us in a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Curmudgeon.
Vote of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and folks, if you could remain standing for a moment of silence in respect to our first responders and our military men and women who serve our interest in our security every day, and have some have given their ultimate price. And if we think about them in our thoughts for them. Thank you.
Michael, welcome everybody. Oh, the people that came into the church late. There's plenty of seats, and the collection will be in 15 minutes.
We'll be out in 14.
Thank you all for coming. We will be live streaming the meeting again as we usually do, and we got Jason Mike sitting down in front. He's making me very nervous here for some reason. What I want to do is give the chairman's report and then find out who's here for what, because we want to move everybody up front so you don't have to stay all night, because we have a lot on this agenda to get done tonight. The chairman's report goes like this. The township is in receipt of a geophysical survey that was done on Boot Road. There was an issue there with respect to some stuff. If you're interested, we have the report. The board met in an executive session tonight to discuss a personal matter. The West District Area COG is meeting on the 29th of this month at West Wetland to discuss the Cadmus Energy Transition report and what they're going to do going forward. John, why don't you give just a little brief overview of what's going to happen, and we'll go from there.
Sure. About 8 months ago, the Westchester Area Council of Governments, which consists of all the municipalities in and around Westchester, collectively hired a Boston-based consulting firm called Cadmus to essentially analyze and evaluate how this region could get to 100% renewable electricity by the year 2035 and 100% renewable energy from all sources by 2050. The culmination, as Marty alluded to, will be a week from tomorrow at the West Whiteland Township Building. Cadmus will be in town making a presentation. There's an advisory group consisting of representatives from each of the municipalities that's been working hand in glove with them, and they'll have some recommendations as well. And once that happens, once the report is made to COG, then the matter has to get passed down to the individual municipalities to discuss our interest level in undertaking the various initiatives that we laid out.
That takes care of that. The last thing I want to mention is I think that are there some people here relative to the immigration situation as well? That's been, what's the word I'm looking for?
Federal judge had filed an injunction, or it was enjoined. Thank you, Mr. Larry. So it's no longer a ripe issue for discussion at this point.
Yeah, in other words, if you came here for that, you can leave because we're not going to discuss it because there's nothing to discuss until they release the thing back out to the real world again. They shut it down so we don't have to do anything. So if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay, but if we're not going to talk about it, there's nothing to talk about. With that said, we have our fire marshal here. Carmen, I want you to come up, and it's the last thing that we're going to do before we get to some of the other stuff, to give the fire marshal's report, which is, Carmen has asked, as most of you probably know, he has been a supervisor here for many years, and he's no longer a supervisor. He decided not to run for re-election, but he's going to give the emergency services report for Goshen Fire Company and Malvern Fire Company.
Good evening, board. Good evening, residents.
Hey, Carmen.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Nice to see
Is
you.
everybody warm? What I'm about to tell you is online on the East Goshen website. So everything is that I would say plus more. What I'm going to be giving you tonight are just some very general stats of the different fire companies and clubs that protect East Goshen Township. So Goshen Fire Company for December now, and this will be for East Goshen only. We have it broken down that we have fire responses of 26, and that covers a multitude of any kind of a call. We have fire police responses, which do traffic control and or enforcement as needed to assist, protect us and the residents, of 12. The biggie is our emergency services, which includes a lot of nursing home and a lot of fall assist, which is a real problem for the fire company and their career staff. There's 213 calls for December alone, and that response of 251. That's for Goshen Fire Company. Malvern Fire Company does a very small area of our north part of the township, and they do back up with some other companies. So for December, Malvern had 41 calls, and these are all ambulance calls. They had 9 basic life support with 9 transports, and they had 32 advanced life supports with 17 transports, meaning people were taken to the hospitals. I'm not going to get into it unless the board or the residents have any questions, but you will see the yearly stats for Goshen Fire Company on the website. I would suggest you take a minute to look at them and see where the resources of our fire protection, where it goes, and sometimes where it is not used to the best capacity of East Goshen residents. So to the board, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Carmen.
No,
Thanks.
Wait a minute, there's 2 from the audience.
Yes, ma'am.
Are one of those calls reimbursed?
Hey, Donna, I forgot to say this, but because we're live streaming, you gotta come up and do what Carmen did, otherwise you won't be seen on the live streamers. I forgot about that. You have to be shown.
I just have a question. I have parents who were in a nursing home as well, and they had many falls. But their insurance covered that emergency, the ambulance call, right? So the ambulance people do get reimbursed, is that right?
Only a small portion. The insurance companies.
Look in the mic, Carmen.
The insurance companies have a maximum payment along with Medicare and others where they will only pay a certain amount. For example, a call might be $300, and I'm just pulling a figure out of the air. Medicare and insurance may pay $100. So the reimbursement is not anywhere near what it should be.
The resident is responsible for their difference because we got the bills.
You get the bills, that is correct, and there is no method for us to take you to court. So we ask you to help to offset it, but if you, number 1, can't, or number 2, don't want to, we have no method through the township to take you to court to get you to pay for one of your family members.
A lot of times when a resident falls, of course I was the daughter of the resident, any adult could pick these people up, but the nursing home does not permit that. They don't want any of their workers or their employees to assist the resident. And so they call the ambulance instead of calling the parent, the children, to assist in this.
That is just liability. They don't want the liability, so once they dial 911, that shifts the liability over to the EMS, and it makes them now responsible to pick up. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve a pickup, but you are correct. In many cases, the staff could pick them up very easily, but they have policies that they won't touch it.
I think there ought to be something worked out. There has to be a means of addressing this need without you holding the bill.
We have been trying, and the township, I can tell you, the township, including when I was on the board, is very proactive with this. And what they're trying to do is meet with the other townships that are affected, Willistown, West Goshen, and East Goshen, and come up with something that we can help to have the nursing homes have some sort of a method of involvement, of financial involvement. And that's ongoing.
So I'd be happy to assist with that.
Thank you.
Donna, what was your last name?
Faunce, Faunce.
Nice seeing you, Donna.
Thank you.
Chief, I think you're ready to give your report, aren't you, Chief?
Any other questions?
Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Bernard's gonna come up and we'll get into the other stuff. You thought I was gonna forget you, didn't you?
Yeah.
Carmen was nervous.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to highlight a couple things that happened towards the end of 2019. The department participated in several charity drives. Toys for Tots was a huge success thanks to the donations from East Goshen residents. We also had One Warm Coat, which we've been doing for a number of years, and once again, we collected more coats, hats, etc., than we ever did in previous years. The officers participated in Beards for Charity, where they gave money and the police union gave money to match. Trying to think, there were 12 police departments in Chester County that raised funds for a breast cancer charity and also for a fallen officer, and they raised $40,000. And we thought we were done, but about a week before Christmas, one of our officers went to a facility for an investigation, and he found out that the children there had no presents for Christmas. So between the administrative unit, which is all the ladies who provide clerical assistance to the police department, and the police union, they made sure that every child in the facility had 3 presents on Christmas morning. One of the things that it made us realize is that charity drives should not just be centered around the holidays. So we invite you to visit our Facebook page, and we will be doing different charities, different drives, and it doesn't matter whether you can donate time or you can donate money. We have so many people that are still in need in our townships, and we need to help serve them too. And lastly, I'm going to give another pitch for it. Citizen Camera Registry. It is a voluntary program that if you have an exterior camera and you are willing to register it with us, what we do is when we have a crime in the area, we call you and we say, hey, we had something happen last night. Check your cameras, please. See if you have anything. And if you do, would you please share it with us? We did this drive about 6 months ago, and we have 16 cameras. We had a young lady who was pregnant who was delivering pizza in one of our townships. And the gentleman, when she wouldn't give up the money, he pushed her down the steps. No cameras. We want to solve crimes like that, and this is the best way that you can partner with us. We don't have access to anything. You give us access that you want to give us. So we might say, hey, we had a crime between 6 and 7 last night. Check your camera. Hey, I caught a car. I think I got the tag on the car. That's what we're looking for. So if you have Ring or any of the other exterior security cameras, please register them. You go to our website through Crime Watch, and then we know to contact you if there's a crime in the area. But we don't access anything. You only give us what you want us to see. And that's all that I have for this month. Any questions from the board
I
first?
just wish on behalf of this board, to thank the officers and those that were responsible for the charitable drives that you did,
Oh, we
particularly the
do.
ones that discovered the ones that weren't getting. And gifts for Christmas. That's really something for officers to do that. And so I appreciate if you tell the officers.
I can't tell you how many times citizens come and they drop food off for the officers. And there's such generosity, and I just would like to funnel all that generosity into some people who really are very needy. Those young children, they cry because of what their parents are going through. It's a facility where their mother is in rehab, and they're allowed to bring their children with them. So children are going from unfortunate circumstances, and this is an opportunity for us to help them. Some of these children had never had presents before on Christmas morning.
We also have a lot of older folks here. Do you want to give your normal warning about scams?
Okay. I can't name them all, there's too many. Literally, if these people would take the energy that they devote to doing the scams and do something constructive, world peace and cancer would be cured. Literally, there are so many scams. And here's what we tell people. Do not give personal information over the telephone. Do not give it in person. Do not give it via internet. If you have any doubt that anything sounds bad, all you have to do is say, I'm going to call the police department, and if they say it's okay, then it's okay. I guarantee you they'll hang up on you very quickly. If you read our, how many people here have signed up to get our police blotters? A few, a handful? We have senior citizens in the East Goshen every month that are out thousands of dollars because of these scams. And if you can spread the word, we would really appreciate it. There was one person, and we did a shout out to them on our Facebook because we couldn't identify who it was. A resident from East Goshen legitimately thought they were getting their computer repaired. So the person quotes a price. They say, you have to go out and buy these gift cards and read us the numbers off the back. They go out to Target, they buy the gift cards, and we're talking close to $7,000 total. Now, you know what you could do with $7,000. And as they were buying the dot cards, the cash register operator said, why are you buying these? This is an awful lot of gift cards. And when they told them, they said, this is a scam. That was we called them our hero of the week. So if we could train people who work at these stores, if we could train you to talk to your neighbors, and if we can treat everybody in the neighborhood to the same story, don't do it. Please don't give your personal information out. Trust me, the IRS does not have your phone number. Neither does the sheriff's department. Your police department may not even have your telephone number. So that's all I can really say. There's too many scams.
What do you want them to do if they think you're?
Call. If you have any doubt that you are being scammed, call us. Let us know. It's better safe than sorry. And especially call us before you give any information or any money to any person.
Chief, thank you. Anybody have any questions for the chief?
You know, here's one that I do now. Chief, you'll probably scold me for this, but I know when we get a call on our landline that will sometimes say unavailable, or it may say spam, and I will answer those calls now and then. And the first thing I will say is, good evening. You're on a recorded line. How may we help you today? Every time.
Don't answer the phone at all when you see it.
I know.
Because what happens is they know that's a valid line. And once they know it's a valid line, they sell your telephone number to others.
Seems like we continue to get them, but I do get some, my own, you know, I'm cutting up my nose quite
My cell phone that's issued to me by the police department, I will occasionally answer West Town, East Goshen Regional Police Department. How may I help you?
And
Yeah, they hang up on me.
I think the lady over here is coming.
Ma'am, can you please provide your name?
Joanne, your check.
Okay.
What's your Facebook page?
We Go PD.
We Go.
You can either write West Town, East Goshen Police Department or We Go PD.
That's our police, that's our police, and that's their chief, just in case you don't know that.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you. And I was a victim of a scam too, and I'm quite computer literate. And it came from my friend's email, and she asked for gift cards, and I fell for it. She was in Australia, and she said she needed them. I fell for it. I lost a lot of money. I'm very computer literate, so.
And the sad part is we're targeting businesses even more because they know that if I get an email from Rick Smith saying, do this, I'm going to do that. And especially if it's something that normally happens, like he says, write a check and send it here or transfer funds, like if he did that to our business manager, that's common. And now that people know how to spoof telephone numbers and they know how to spoof email addresses, it's even worse.
Well, I even asked, after I had lost $800 in gift cards, I started to get suspicious, and I said, can you tell me? And I asked questions of the person that was my friend's address. I said, whom did we go to New York with in May? They came back with the right.
Oh, that's scary. Did you put it on Facebook or any other social media?
Facebook, but I did document it, and I sent it to the FBI and everything.
No, but in other words, could that person, like for example, the grandparent scam is very common.
No, this one, and I did, but I had, what happened was that they gave me the right answer, the names correctly and everything. They had control of my friend's email is what happened.
Wow.
So, and I documented everything. And a policeman did come and say before Christmas I was here, but, you know, it was too late.
Pete, if that's important, you want to summarize that conversation for the people out there.
Yeah, because they can hear.
I forgot to mention that. It's very, very important that anybody wants to say something. Up to the microphone.
What she said is that if somebody actually truly hijacks an email account, they're going to have all the information that the actual individual would have, such as names, relationships, etc. If that happens, there's no way to avoid that. Because it's like children, we always used to like, you have that word. It's like if anybody comes to pick you up from school, ask them what the special word is. And it's the same way. You ask questions that only your friend would know. But they had the information because they had truly hijacked the email account. And recently something happened where I got an email from township supervisor. And I didn't check. I didn't really look at it that carefully. I didn't realize it was their personal email address. And if I had clicked on the link, that would have been it. They would have ransomware. They would have had the entire department, police department, held ransom. So I don't accept emails. I will send stuff out to any email that our supervisors want. But if I get an email from them, I don't respond because I could ask questions, and if they truly hijack their account, I'm not going to know if it's them or if it's somebody who has access to their account. Like I said, if they use their energy for something constructive, we would live in an amazing world.
The lesson to learn there is if you're being robbed, don't call one of the supervisors, call the chief of police. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
For the benefit of you folks out there, I need to know, is everybody in the room here for the noise ordinance? Or is there somebody, or is there some other reason? Because I would like to get that stuff done up front so you could go if you choose to go. Is there anything else anybody's here for that wants to say something? Or is it all noise? All noise? This is a noisy crowd, isn't it? I will say this, we do want to hear from everybody tonight. We have somewhat tabled this thing for a while, although we'll take into consideration what you're going to say. We've had some conversations ourselves, and this is a little bit more complicated than we thought. We might even go a different direction. However, we may not. So whoever came tonight to make comments, please feel free to do that. I'd appreciate it if you line up by threes over on the wall, and so you get ready to go right to the mic so we don't take too much time in the transition. So if somebody wants to go first, please feel free to go first. We need your name and address for the record. John's already warned me about that, and I have to listen to him.
I know everybody's names.
Just to be clear, we have a draft ordinance. It was on the website. Some of you have seen it and read it. We're not going to act on that tonight. So the purpose of having your input is to get your thoughts and ideas so that we can incorporate that into anything that we might do in the future. So that's where we are right now.
Well, thanks for listening to us. My name is Jack Rickenbach. I live in Hershey's Mill Estates at 1558 Tanglewood Drive. I've been a resident there for going on 37 years in May, and I love our community. We have a great community, hey Jason, I didn't notice you. A great
You come
community.
down here more often.
Pardon?
It would be nice if you came down here more often.
You think?
We love what you're saying.
Okay. So anyway, I'm here to get some clarification and some input and some rationale, and maybe be able to make some suggestions for the noise ordinance. I'm kind of one of the instigators of why this is happening. I guess I am the instigator. 3 years ago, I built a pergola in my backyard, and I invited neighbors over because I've been a musician for 40 years. Have dozens of musician friends from up and down the East Coast, and I thought it'd be really cool if I could bring them into the community, invite neighbors. They could bring covered dishes. We could have a nice afternoon with lawn chairs in my backyard, and spend 3 hours listening to some great music. And it worked out great. But I did have one neighbor who found that to be not the right thing to do in our neighborhood, and talked to me directly about it. And I asked him what his problem was, and he said, well, I just want you to stop. I said, well, I don't intend to stop. he said, I said, why? He said, well, I literally said, I don't like music. I said, well, it's not just about music, it's about socializing with your neighbors. He said, well, I don't like to do that either. So I was caught between a rock and a hard place, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. So year 2, he gave me a very nasty phone call and said, I'm going to tell you what you're allowed to do next year. And I didn't know what he meant by that. And then I realized he meant I'm going to go to the township and write a letter of complaint and blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, I read the letter that he wrote, and there are a lot of, first of all, exaggerations in there. And the thing that really bothered me is the way he worded it. If it actually would be considered passed by the supervisors, it doesn't just influence me, it would influence all of Hershey Mill Estates. It doesn't just influence Hershey Mill Estates because it's a noise ordinance for the township, it would influence the entire township. And I thought that's just ridiculous. And there's some issues that I think are easy to address. I understand many of the points of view that I read in the draft, and I can support them. I don't have a problem with a lot of them. The big issue, I think, or one of the big issues, is the permit section of the proposal. I was forced to get a permit last year because of the fuss that was raised, which I did, and there was no issue. And as it turned out, that day got rained out, so it never even happened. My point of view is that one of the things that was expressed to me was the permit process would create extra work for the township because they would the form, they would approve it, and then they would have to send out a letter to everyone within 1,000 feet of the event. And I said, okay, and that's what they did. But I said, there's a simpler way. You don't have to do all this work. You're just creating bureaucracy for yourself. If me or anyone else had to do a permit, we fill out the form, send it in, you say, okay, here is your permit, send back a letter. I would put that on my email to all the neighbors that come to these things, or we have a great newsletter. We could put it in the newsletter, and whether it's me or whether it's a pool party or a new neighbors party, we do a lot of social events in our neighborhood. All you have to do is let me have the letter. I send out the email, we put it in the newsletter. You would see that, and you don't have to write a letter to 50 people. You don't have to pay postage to 50 letters. So I just think that's one aspect that could really be simplified. The noise level and so forth is fine. I understand, what that's all about. I've been a musician, and frankly, the noise level of the events that I have hosted are, the ordinance says 65 decibels. I measure it with a decibel reader, and any given event that I've had ranges from 60 to 80 decibels. Then that's hardly, loud, obnoxious. We don't do rock and roll. We do acoustic music, folk music, songwriters, that kind of thing. So that's my point of view, and I welcome anyone else, to support that. I did receive a letter from, excuse me. We have a very professional realtor from Keller Williams in our neighborhood, and I will give you this to submit it, but some interesting points, and one is, it says, as real estate professionals, we are very clear on the advantages of Hershey Mill Estates offers to homeowners. And in our capacity as realtors, when we represent the community, we have been able to help people understand the value of its amenities and its sense of community, and how these amenities and special events add to the home values of HME. Please understand that we truly appreciate the gatherings you host, and we are certain that most residents in HME feel the same way. We truly hope you will continue to bring music and fun to the community. So the letter goes on, but I'll submit that. So that's my point of view. And Jason, we have to do a concert in the park again. That's it. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you very much. David, as you well know, is a resident over there. I'll let you respond, David. Or I'll ask you to respond. Is a better way.
No, and Jack characterized the neighborhood. I remember moving into the neighborhood 25 years ago, and on the counter in the kitchen was a neighborhood newsletter describing all the things that were going on in the neighborhood. It's one of the reasons I bought the house. So it's a great neighborhood, great community, and spring and summer we have Friday night pool party, and generally Jack failed to emphasize that when he has a group of people over, it's usually 4 to 7 so done well before late hours and so on. So it's really not a disturbance to people's sleep and that kind of thing. So it's you know, it's part of the fabric of our neighborhood. So it's an interesting thing. So you know, my concern is we don't want to get too draconian with noise ordinances that would ruin that for the entire township, basically. So.
And I understand as I read the noise ordinance draft that most of this has to do with construction and the pipeline and all kinds of big issues, as opposed to what I consider a very small issue in our case. But just I wanted to clarify on the decibel level. You Google or go online and research decibel levels. A decibel level of 60 is a group of people having a conversation. So, you know, that's pretty low in terms of having that set as an ordinance. Anyway, that's my point of view, and thank you for your time.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, you know, what time do you usually wrap up by? On an average evening, do you wrap up by 8 or 9?
No, 7, they're always listed to 7. Now sometimes if there's an encore, they'll do 7:15. And one time at our 50th, my wife Sharon is right here. We had a 50th anniversary party, and we went till 9 o'clock. So it went to 9 that night, but we never go near 10.
So, right. And then, do you have any shrubs or anything, or trees that separate your property between
Yes,
the other properties?
I mean it doesn't make a sound barrier, but yes,
No, there's some
shrubs and
That's
trees.
all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's great, Jack, that you listen to your wife. I think I need to ask you a very important question. Is David a good neighbor?
The best, the best.
Wayne's here.
Especially when he rides his motorcycle through the
I
neighborhood.
want everybody to know, Wayne is the president, I guess, of the homeowners association, Wayne Hall, right, Wayne? I want to thank you for the email you sent out us today. It took me all day to read it. I must tell you, I've never received a longer email in my life. So you're welcome to come up and make comments. Hopefully you're going to be a little shorter there, Jack. You can,
As Wayne comes up, I wanted to make a comment, and Jack made reference to it, discernment between our looking at construction-related issues and the other residential matters of noise. That's one of the reasons that we're tabling this, because we're trying to dissect this and focus on the matters that brought this up in the first place in the broader sense that has to do with the pipeline fatigue and the construction noises and what we've had. So that's one of the reasons that we're tabling it, to try and focus on what the big issue is, not necessarily some of these neighborhood matters that I think can be very politely and civilly and in a British kind of way settled very nicely amongst neighbors without bureaucracy, fines, sticks, and all the other stuff that goes with it. So I appreciate that. And that's why I wanted to.
Just one other comment. It sounds like one of the things with the permit is you feel like it puts a burden on the board. And my point of view is, I want the burden on me. I can disseminate all that information. You don't have to spend hours putting a letter together and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
Wayne, how are you, sir?
Very good. How's everyone?
Good. Nice to see you.
Thank you for the opportunity. And just for the record, I really appreciate the tolerance and the patience that you showed reading those single-spaced tomes I sent along.
Great wordsmithing and very well constructed.
I'm only 2/3 of the way done, man.
My ability for wordsmithing, I always owe to my 12th grade high school English teacher, Kate Parks Kitchen. She would fail you if you misspelled one word on the paper. And she also, the whole sentence, the framework, paragraph structure. So I apologize, but it's saved me a lot of pain in life.
I owe it to the Sisters of Mercy, and I still have to do nothing to take care of it.
Now, Miss Kitchen, thank her, and God bless her. Jesus. Sometimes it just helps to bury them in words. But most of the time it doesn't. Now, the things that, I'm not gonna go long, the things that concern me, I'm looking at the document, I talked to Dave, David, I apologize, I'm working on that. I don't want him coming across the desk. But fundamentally, the document itself is thorough, it's clear, it's got the numbers in there, but the thing that always gets me, coming from the engineering background, is numbers always are boundaries. And makes life interesting if you're trying to enforce the numbers, if you're trying to measure to the numbers, and yada, yada, yada. It can become complicated. So to your point, it'd be nice if we could settle these things out individually and not have to do the, very sometimes detailed kind of things you do to answer, was this a violation or not? Okay. But the one thing that still concerns me is I was under the impression, and I apologize for not, I met with the lieutenant at the police department. We go. Very, very professional fellow, answered questions extremely well. And he indicated that there's a summary process in place where they get a noise complaint, and the arrival of the police representatives on the scene, their judgment begins to play at that point. If it's a situation that is considered, how do you say it, above the pale, beyond the pale, or a situation that's definitely disruptive, then they are empowered to make decisions up to and including a summary citation, I believe. Okay? And the citation, I had the impression, was a 2-digit number, $40, $50, or something like that. Whatever it is, I don't know for sure. But they're perfectly willing to come back and cite you multiple times if you keep getting caught. On the assumption that sooner or later people get tired of this, paying these things, and possibly resolve their issues themselves. But the figures quoted in the document are 100 to 1,000. So my question was immediately, wow, I know you don't want to see $100, citation coming your way, and definitely not 1,000. But the question becomes, okay, is it a summary action or is it something else? So I'm concerned about that. Okay. From the neighborhood in general, the permit process, it's, the question is, if you're looking at pool permits, for example, our pool is kind of a social gathering point. There's informal Fridays. We have, rentals for people to have parties. They'll have, I guess, meatball night, for example, and raise a little money. I mean, it's a lot of fun down there. And people are generally happy, so there's a lot of laughter. Occasionally there's some music going on, but it's not necessarily really, maybe 6 or 7 homes are close to it, but it seems to me to be not really what we want to do to have to get permits in every one. The other thing is on the permit itself, it says, what do you think is the DBA number you're going to put out? So, and I'd like to concur with Mr. Rickenbach here. I was out there on caroling night. And
Were you saying?
no, I was stakeholding. I was doing the phone with an app, and the app basically was designed for restaurants. But I got a better one now. Found a better one now. Just wouldn't be there to share with you. Yeah, but fundamentally, I agree. The average was 62, 65, 64. I got three good times. The peaks were always low 80s, 84, 83, 82. So he's accurate. He's controlling the output of the event. And I concur with his estimation. And, it violated because it did go across the threshold, but on average, it was there. And the peak was generally when the children got on the microphone. Children, they love those things. That kind of thing. But it was cute, it was fun, and people enjoyed themselves. But and I also was able to observe, Mr. Geyer was in his home at the window, so he was hearing it, and I'm sure he was. But fundamentally, I just wanted to confirm what you had put forth.
Thank
you. Yeah, my pleasure. But clarifying whether this is summary or how is the citation, what is going to work on the penalty is something that troubles me, because that seems to be getting pretty serious. We're dropping that kind of expectation of someone that's come up with money. The other thing is, my experience in the world so far tells me that if someone gets gruffed up with the noise concerns, they might call the board, they might talk with the neighbor, they may call 911, they may call the police directly. There's lots of ways you can get at it and start the process. Okay. Again, my concerns, one person can create a situation that really makes something that's really unfortunate and unnecessary, but they have access to a lot of ways to get the message out that they're concerned. And I'm really You know, I don't like the idea of fees, because I think the township, if you're coming up with a bunch of permits, all of a sudden where you used to, in talking with representative of the township, 8,000 homes in East Goshen, and maybe you sent one to each one, but never two. He couldn't remember sending two out. So it's like, okay, over the years, there's been maybe 8,000 permits. But all of a sudden, if this goes into play, it can change that pretty radically. So I'm not sure that's necessary. And even that troubles me, because if I got to tell you what my permit limit is, then I pull up this is my list here, where 165 dB is a 12 gauge shotgun. And you only hear that up close once, and then the rest of the time you won't hear it. But no, my experience is a combination of law enforcement and gun, anyway. I wear my headphones. I really do, because it's crazy. But 65, typical speech, as represented. But you get up in the 80s, it's busy city traffic. Now, busy city traffic can be aggravating, but that's where possibly the peaks were in the evening of the event that you held for Carolyn. It's traffic. The ambient noise at that point was 40s in that evening, and some of it was 202 traffic. So the ambient noise, only gives you 20 dB of headroom. But the numbers, they're tough. But you gotta have a threshold. You gotta have a limit. So I understand that. But the process is, okay, if somebody calls in a complaint, is the noise control officer going to have to respond with the equipment? I don't think the police are going to be given the equipment because of the cost. And it gets to be kind of a confounding situation. So I really appreciate the fact that you're taking a look at it from that perspective, because it can get pretty wrinkled pretty fast. Okay, but the neighborhood itself is unique, and it was quickly apparent that when the situation arose, that the ordinance and the timing generated, kind of a, building effect, that all of a sudden it became, perhaps an opportunity to piggyback on the noise ordinance, which initiated due to other activities and other kind of noise sources. And it's like jackpot. Next thing you know, we got something going on here that's, furrier than we like. Yeah. And it's something that, thank you for considering that. I appreciate that. I know the neighborhood people appreciate that. And we really would hate to have to lose, the kind of atmosphere and the kind of camaraderie and community that we've got in place there. And besides, you know how hard it is to find a person willing to be a president? The 3 years, we like to pick on the news. Sometimes they don't know what to expect, but no, the people are willing to help. And in order to keep that kind of willingness to engage in the community and make it positive, I really appreciate whatever you can put at it.
Wayne, let me assure you, the board does not want to diminish any community that has life to it. Because some of our communities don't have any life to it, and one of them is where I live. So I really thank you for all the work you do. I know that you have been a very supportive individual of us here, and I'm going to let Ricky tell you a little bit, because I know there's a lot of people in the Mercerville States here, tell you about the dam, just so you know firsthand what's going on with the dam, because things are starting to happen. So when we're done this, I'll ask Ricky to just give you a little tiny update so you know what's going on.
Yeah, the township's a good township. It's a solid township. Rick's got some plaques on his wall.
Rick is the man. We just take orders from Rick. That's all.
Wayne, thanks for your comments.
Wayne, your comments were very germane. We have, David has brought a lot of these issues to us. Jack's issue has been somewhat of an eye-opener to us in terms of what we're doing to your community in general, as one of the reasons that we have kind of backed off a little bit to get a better sense of this whole thing. Might talk about it. We may even go a different direction. Somebody mentioned construction earlier on. That is an issue, and it was an issue in this, and it may become something that we deal with more so than even the noise ordinance, but I'm not committing to anything. But we certainly have thought about that. So, Wayne, we appreciate the email and all that contained. And Jack, I must tell you, you're a very good speaker at the microphone. So thank you very much.
That's my job. And I'm gonna suggest that maybe we have a music event at Martin's house to help him with this.
You're welcome to do that. Come on up. Come on up and let us know your name and address.
My name is Joanne Yurchak, and I'm 1397 Springton Lane in Hershey's Mill. And I know you said no refugee resettlement discussion, and I had this presentation prepared. I'm going out of town for 2 months. I had an opinion on it. If you'd rather, I have it written out. I can just give it to you. I can give it to you. Okay.
I'm not sure how long this is going to stay in the current state.
I know that.
But there's no reason to take the time tonight.
That's fine.
Thanks.
That's fine.
We'll have that meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And wherever you go, have fun, be safe.
Thanks so much.
So here. No, you can't do that.
I'm loud. I'm very loud.
No, you can't. They can't hear you. Seriously. We don't fight up here, so it's okay. I think Jack survived. Wayne survived. You'll be okay.
Are you discussing the zoning changes along Paoli Pike tonight?
No.
Not on the agenda.
As a matter of fact, that may be for a while. That may stay for a while.
Okay. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Board, thanks, residents. My name is David Van Dyke. My wife Jenna and I, with our kids, who are in high school now, live at 1556 Tanglewood Drive, right next door to the Brick and Box. I can't say anything any better than the two gentlemen that preceded me said, but I do want to just paint a picture of the direct neighbor experience to the Jackyard concerts. When we moved into the neighborhood, we were blown away with how tight the community is, how social the community is. It was compared to where we were coming from. So it's a special place. We plan to be there a long time. I think we've been there 13, 14 years. Jax and Sharon have been very respectful of, even before they put in their, the pergola, asked us about it. We said, absolutely no problem. It's never been a problem. But just to sort of paint that picture of what the noise, or the music, I won't call it noise because it's lovely. It's lovely music. If our windows are closed, we can't tell that they've commenced. In fact, we open the windows so that we can get a little bounce into the house if we can't be outside just yet. But these are things that we've brought not only our kids to, Jen and I both brought our parents to enjoy this. And we hope to be able to bring friends to enjoy it, to show off the neighborhood a little bit, because every time I video some of the concert and I post it or I text it to my friends, oh my gosh, you live in the most amazing neighborhood, and that's what it is. So really just as as the person that lives next door, I was surprised to even hear that this was an issue. It's the addition that it brings to the community is so much more than any minor noise nuisance it might cause to some. I get if you don't like music, it's not your thing. You're not social, it's not your thing. And I'm not here to put down anybody for what they believe. However, I do want to just paint that picture that I'm astounded that I'm standing here in front of you talking about this. But like I said, I can't say anything more that hasn't been said, and I don't know what a decibel limit is, but I'll take the word of the two esteemed gentlemen here. That's all I want to say. So thanks.
Good, thanks for that perspective.
Say hello to Dave for me. I know that it just goes to show we'll have an age factor in this audience. I know I've known his family for a lot of years, so it's really nice to see how they grow up and how successful they are. So congratulations.
Thanks for the comments. And I think we're going to take this, as we say, table it, and it's under consideration now.
Mike, we definitely have to let everybody say what they want to say. I know you want to go home. Mike goes to bed at 6:30, and this is really a late night for Mike. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Because it's really important. I know one of the realtors is in the back, and he's feeling very good because the price of all the houses went up $10,000.
That has been said. Yes, with something fresh, all ears.
Be very brief. Bob Murray, 1529 Tanglewood. I just want to, and I've lived in the neighborhood for 26 years, 28. 28.
Time flies.
Yeah, whatever. And I'm past president of the Homeowners Association.
Don't say that too
On the
loud.
past, is the emphasis on past. But at any rate, I think everyone's alluded to this, but I just want to make it clear that this isn't like a Hatfields and McCoy's thing where there's one group of the neighborhood who's for this and another group. And I mentioned I have two daughters. At any rate, no one that I have talked to in the neighborhood doesn't really enjoy this and is against it. Nobody has a complaint that I have ever talked to, and everybody is great. They ask, when is the next, gathering going to be? How does it work? What can I bring? So it's just something that I think the whole neighborhood, or just about the whole neighborhood, is behind.
Yeah, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any comments?
May I ask a question here?
Yeah, you can, while the lady's running up to the microphone. Yeah.
All right, let me interrupt you a second. Is there anyone here, I want to hear all the points of view. Is there anyone here who wants to speak against the sound? I won't call it noise.
Music.
Music, yes. Is there anyone who would like to speak as opposed to the opinions that we've heard so far? Okay, I'm good.
Unless Don McLean is here and.
I'm Lisa Schaefer from, Mill Race Lane. And I just wanted real quick to say that, there's social committee, there's different committees in the neighborhood that keep it what it is. And I'm fortunate enough to have thrown a couple of parties for the neighborhood, like a neighbor's party and ice cream parties and different things at the end of the school year. And I'm just thinking about this summer when we had a party. Now, it's not Jack Yard, but it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from there. And it is a music, not issue, but topic. Whereas I was setting up the party, we were setting up speakers to share music, so we could have a little dance floor. And a couple of guys that were doing it for me, I wasn't setting it up. I was just like, we just need this here. The conversation it was Matt Kane and Rob Stevens, was all about how we were facing the speakers, too high, too low, too left, too right, to keep the sound contained. And that was long before this was a conversation. So I just wanted to say that I think as neighbors, without even telling us, there is consideration for the whole neighborhood. It's my, yeah.
By the way, so everybody knows, tonight we confirmed the fact that David will be the Gestapo of the neighborhood starting tonight. So if anybody has any problems, they contact David. He has Anybody else have any comments? Let me have Rick give you an update real quick on the dam, and that way everybody will know.
So, we've got the permit for the Hershey Mill Dam. The next step is to put it out to bid. The current schedule, assuming the board awards the contract for the engineer to put it out for bid inspection. Anticipates it'll be under construction sometime in June. There's some restrictions on when we can actually work on a stream, so we can't get into the stream until June. But if everything goes well, it'll be done by the end of the year.
I'm fascinated by because Rick has already told me the answer to this thing. The fish are preventing us from starting anytime soon until June. Isn't that amazing? The fish are stopping us from doing the construction. So we are environmentally, there's our sign. Here we go. I just want you to know we're environmentally sound. For those that, we'll go back to the agenda now. For those that want to leave, please feel free to do so. We're used to it. Normally we end up with Eric down here and that's it, and Jason when he's here. So thank you everybody for coming. You're welcome to stay. I appreciate you taking the time. Jack, thank you very much for your comments. And here, in fact, you started this, it's not me against you. He told me to say that. See you all, thank you. See you, Eric. Yes. See you, Eric. That's always welcome. Thank you very much.
Not yet. Out there. It'll be fun.
Okay, so let's get to it. It's already 8 o'clock.
Hey guys, keep on moving. Do me a favor, get your tribe out and shut the door.
So let's finish.
I close the door, you shut the door, will you please? Thanks.
Thanks, Wayne.
So on an unaudited basis, on a cash unaudited basis, we finished the 2019 with a deficit of $57,487. The general fund balance was $5,625,000 and change. The administration was over budget, basically by that amount. And that was due to, you know, again, as I've alluded to several times, the building vestibule project. Public Works was also over budget, and that was just due to the pond projects. We started the Bow Tree Pond a little earlier than I had expected. However, Public Works was significantly under budget due to savings on snow removal, road work, and paving. We saved a lot this year, and a lower. Remember, we had actually passed the 2019 budget anticipating hiring that fire inspector that would have necessitated a new vehicle. That didn't happen, so there was some savings there. And that also manifested itself in codes being under budget. Earned income tax was under budget, but still higher than in 2018 and 2017. But obviously, because of the sale of Waterview earlier in the year, transfer tax was and really strong residential sales. Transfer tax was well over budget. There is a discrepancy in the pass-through accounts, as I outline here. Basically, as you may remember, Aqua raised its rates for hydrants in the beginning of the year because of the staff turnover. Basically, we did that increase in rates was never made its way into the instructions, and I didn't realize it was out of balance until the very end of the year. We billed Hershey's Mill Villages for the shortfall, so it will be a receivable. Nothing out of the ordinary on other funds. The refuse fund did better than it should have, just because we got 2 commercial recycling grants last year rather than the normal 1. So next year with a rate increase, hopefully we'll tread water there. Utilities accounts receivable really low, only slightly above last year's record low. And real estate accounts receivable, which we sent off to the county a couple weeks ago, was slightly higher than normal, but still below $10,000. Yield is falling on township funds. We're at 1.71%, and that's down from 2.15% 3 months ago. Part of that's due to the fact that a lot of the CDs we had at much higher rates that we purchased back when rates were still high have now matured. Mike and I have talked about this a little bit, but it's really at a point where liquid investments are a better deal than tying your money up in illiquid money, just because there's the expectation that rates are going to fall further. So it's not a great time to be playing the township cash. And last but not least, the auditors will be here the first week in February.
Thanks, Jim.
I'd also point out another thing too, and this is important. Rick's going to talk later about the costs of the construction, management, and inspection for both the Hershey's Mill and Milltown dams, as the that new the FEMA floodplain report that needs to be done. If you go to the Q4 2019 bond fund, I have a worksheet that shows what the projected balance of the bond fund will be when all the projects are said and done. It's at $280,000. So just want to keep that one in the back of your mind. We still are looking at it on the general fund side, a small a surplus, but a small surplus. So obviously I pay careful attention to that.
On behalf of the board, I want to thank John and Rick too, for that matter, and the staff for getting this stuff done. And we finished the year up a little bit with a negative side, but we picked up off our surplus in the general fund account, and that's really wonderful. So, and Jason's here to figure out a way to spend all the money that we don't have. So, rather, God, you only 3 left.
Like a ghost town.
Holy smokes. Well, poor Jason lives up in Allentown, so why don't we do you next to get you out of here so that you can come to work nice and early tomorrow?
Okay.
So you're around here somewhere. I forget where you are, but that doesn't matter, I don't think.
So I have 2 things on the agenda. I have first to discuss and set the date for Community Day. So it's our big event, fireworks, food trucks, live music. Typically in June, we have done August in some years. We settled the Park Commission on recommending June 27th, which is a Saturday. And we chose that date because the schools, as of today, are going to let out on June 12th. Tack on a couple of snow days, maybe. We didn't elect to do June 20th because of graduation parties and that kind of thing. And then we don't want to do July 4th because everyone's out of town at the shore. So June 27th is kind of the happy medium of what we've gone with. You can expect a crowd of 3,000, 3,500 with nice weather. Anticipated cost to include the public works detail is $31,000, which of course Friends of East Goshen, our 501c3, works hard throughout the calendar year to offset the funds. And they more or less have done a really great job in the 6 years they've been here of offsetting that dollar for dollar. So my recommendation would be June 27th. I can answer any question you have about the event, scheduling, or I also have the other events listed, the big ones for the year. If you have a question.
I have a question, but go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Good.
The budget, what do I see, so 25 plus 6, I see a reference to Friends of East Goshen. What's our current budget and what the Friends of, they committed to some dollars? I'm just curious to know what the balance sheet's gonna look like here.
Well, so, the budget is always assumes that Friends of East Goshen is gonna raise money for, well, certainly the full cost of Community Day. And that has happened over the last, as Jason said, sort of the last 5 years, probably 4 times. Last year was a down year. And the Friends whiffed on a couple of big potential donors. Jason and I will circle the wagon on that and, hope that we can get at least the full cost of Community Day. The challenge, Mike, is always with the secondary events, Pumpkin Fest, Egg Hunt. Friends hasn't been raising enough money to cover those as well.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, when you add it all up, if we're getting 70%, funding from donors in the business community, and you think about it, it's like 50% of the attendees are from East Goshen, and so the community is more than subsidizing the cost of non-township residents.
Yeah. I kind of asked the question in respect to Michelle and John, because they're new and they see how this thing is funded and how how it balances out, and participation, as John said, the Friends of has been a very instrumental entity to support these particular community events. So thanks, John.
Hang on for just a second. David had a question for you.
On the finance kind of 2019 and rolling over to 2020, I had a question about right now with the police arbitration, the contract finished January 1 of 2019. If that is awarded, because we're on a cash basis, that's awarded retroactive to 19, how's that going to be accounted for in the 2020 budget?
Well, that's in the 2020 budget, not. Although the board could theoretically open up the budget to amend the police budget, that might not be a bad idea to reflect that additional cost. On a cash basis, you're asking a really good point. If our auditors come really early, so they're really wrapped up by mid-February. So if we don't get the arbitration award, it would be a liability certainly for 2019 on an accrual basis. But just as a practical matter, if it's received after the auditors have sort of done their work, then it would just be reflected on a cash basis in 2020, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
And a budget amendment, as I suggested, I think that would be the way to go as we need to.
Just so everybody knows, Jason was kind enough to call me. I questioned, based on our prior experience, whether the date that we picked is the best date to pick for this. And Jason went through the same things he did tonight on why we sort of have to have it then. But I'm really think it's really interesting and complimentary that you have the food truck and musical festival. There's a lot of people that attend that. You might even get more this year. In fact, there may be more than what's on Community Day. Jason, let me ask you a question. We met with an individual tonight, I won't use his name, that implied that we could do more on Community Day. Has anybody ever offered suggestions up to you with respect to what you might do? Something in addition to what you already do?
We do a survey at the end of every Community Day. Some of the suggestions are fleeting. So it's something I'll investigate a little bit, and either it's impractical or it's not cost effective or it doesn't work out. But to that individual or to the massive general public here, or to the people listening at home actually, we're always open to ideas from the public. But the issue though is we need an idea and we need bodies. That's Community Day is very volunteer driven. So any additional activities that we add on to the public, which are wonderful, we need people to bring the idea, but then also bring the neighborhoods to help deliver the activity. So that's always kind of the issue.
That's a good point, Jason. I have no problem with the layout that Jason has for the year. Jason, I know we're here to approve a single event, that is the Community Day. But given the fact that you've outlined what you would like to do for the year in this memo, it seems to me that unless somebody has a problem with this, what you have laid out seems to me to be appropriate for what you've done in the past. So I ask if the board wants to just do this in one fell swoop, and rather than have Jason come back for each one of these.
I have some comment, I guess, inquisitive on the matter of the food truck festival and the we're really looking to increase the scope of it. And this is not to throw water on the parade. But you know, I asked the question to myself here. I said, how big and how alcohol driven are we making this East Goshen community event? I put that in quotes. You know, colleagues that I've had over in the past in the borough of Westchester have gotten fed up with the Westchester Christmas parade. It's gotten too big and out of hand. The food festival is the same way, but they've created this. It's a juggernaut now, and it's you can't. It's hard to put a stop to it. When we talk about community in our park, what do we mean by community? You know, how much? And I hate to be a borders guy and cutting off, but I'm just asking the question and floating it out there. How big do we want this festival to be? And I'm open. I'm just trying to open the question to see what people's thoughts are, to educate me or give me some perspective.
That's
No
a good
reflection
point.
on you whatsoever.
Are we on the way of being too big?
Let me ask, how does this cost us money or do we make money?
The food truck festival?
Yes.
It's basically draw even.
Okay.
We pay for bands, we pay for WeGo, we pay for, you know, fencing around the beer zone area, everything like that. And then we get compensated by the beer and wine vendors, the food trucks pay us a fee. So it's essentially break even. To quickly answer your question, yes, the event could be too big for East Goshen Park eventually, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Last year was 4,500 people, and we parked a little bit on the little island as you enter on the old entrance, and then up on the football field. We didn't get all the way out to the end, but we got pretty close. I mean, I think we can get to about 6,000 before it's an issue where we're having to cross Paoli or causing traffic jams. I mean, could we go and our guys handle the cars? Absolutely. But for the size of the park, for the actual zone where the food festival is, I think about 6 is probably as big as we want to get it. So if you look at my recommendations for today, that's having a crowd of 4,500, which last year, I know a few were there, the weather was absolutely perfect.
It was great.
Like once every 10 years, perfect. So I wouldn't say we'll have that every year, and the weather plays a significant part in a an event attendance. So I think if we add on one or two more beer wine vendors, it's better for the participant there. But to answer your question, Mike, if we're looking at 10 beer vendors, that's too big for the park. So I think what we have here is a sensible, meeting the need of the current size of the event. But we do have to be aware and sensitive to kind of like the Christmas parade festival, where the park and the space can only afford so much growth. So that's something we have to be aware of.
Did you take into consideration in your numbers that Kelly Ripa stopped drinking alcoholic beverages?
I meant to read that story today.
Just put a statement.
So we're conflating two issues here. One is the issue around the dates for the events, and I think we should, I'd like to make a motion that we schedule the 2020 township events, the 800, the food truck and music festival, pumpkin fest, and the holiday celebration, Christmas tree lighting, per the memo that Jason distributed. So let's just get the dates approved.
Did you include the community day?
Yes.
So I'll second that.
He didn't, but he.
I did, yes, and the community day.
I'll second that.
And are we proving the,
No, just the dates,
Separate.
just the dates in the schedule.
That's a separate. That's what I'm saying, yeah. You will do it now. Well, in which.
No, we're
It's
just
separate,
separate dates.
okay, beautiful. I'm fine.
Take a vote.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Community Day on June 27th.
And all the other dates.
It will not rain that day.
So the second
It'll be
motion
wonderful.
is the permission to allow beer and wine sales, and we've already kind of preempted that motion with a little discussion, but that's okay. So I'm gonna move to allow beer and wine sales and consumption at the 2020 Township Food and Trucking Festival day scheduled for August 29, 2020. With the rain event date set for August 30, 2020.
Second the motion.
I do have, I actually wanted to ask, so last year we had one beer and one wine vendor, and the average line was about 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So, do we really wanna speed up those lines a whole lot more? It's a way to somewhat limit alcohol consumption, and it's kind of self-limiting, if you will. Maybe adding a couple more of the food vendors would be a great idea. I don't know that I really want to make this a drinking event. And I think that there's a little bit of concern that it becomes more of a drinking event, and the parents really shouldn't be there with their children and drinking and then driving home, is my point, I guess. I also don't want to see anybody get out of hand. And I think if we kind of keep it to just a couple of vendors, it's self-limiting and it can be somewhat more contained. And so I would not want to see us increase the number of vendors for beer and alcohol and seltzer. I'd like to see it stay the same.
I would say this, I can appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I share Michelle's
But
concern.
also, since you are weather driven, 20 minutes in a line for anything, particularly something to drink, is a long time.
That's right.
So
May I make a suggestion?
I would say that trying to get it to a point where there's a balance between getting the 20 minutes down to maybe 5 minutes or maybe less would be a great objective to do. But to not try to reduce that time in the line would be, to me, self-defeating. Because I think that some of the people that are there even though they may have children there. And I don't want to see, I'm with Michelle in this, that I don't want to see children and adults get mixed up in the beer drinking contest or something. But I do think, though, that you have to recognize what you're facing. And if you can try to maintain a status quo of where you are, and perhaps just a little more, you're in good shape. But you can't go a lot more. You're only talking about 1,500. That would be easy to do if you put a lot more wine trucks or beer trucks or whatever you're talking about in terms of alcohol. I think you can get there very easily. I don't think you want to do that. So, but I do think you got to shrink that line. Because one of the things we heard, I think last year, was the fact that the line was too long. And that gives you some indication that if you're gonna stay the same, you're gonna have the long lines again, or you're gonna shorten the lines, but you're gonna shorten your attendance at the same time.
Jason, last year, did we have the fenced in beer garden areas?
We did.
People were kind of walking with beer in the general area.
Yes, so we had the fenced in beer area, which was essentially the grass area behind the amphitheater. We had a legal police officer in uniform who walked around. I was very pleasantly surprised by the behavior of everybody at the event. I honestly thought at least I would have to tell one person, hey, slow it down or something, you know? Literally, the legal police officer played football with kids for 4 hours. Like, it was such a really wonderful event. There were some kids there, but I think the nice thing about this is it was a nice event for 25 to 45, which as a department, we don't really do a great job with that population. You know, they're in our parks, they're active, they're healthy on the trails, but in terms of an actual event, kind of like the concert here in the backyard, like that, this is kind of our backyard concert, so.
Yeah, last year we had one wine and one beer vendor, and the lines were long. And so what we're talking about doing is adding one beer vendor, and for my gluten-free friends, it's a cider seltzer. So I'm actually in favor of that as a kind of, let's try it this year, and then tweak it next year. I got there a little late, and I waited in line at one food vendor, and just when I was stepping up, she came out of the truck and said, "I'm sorry, folks, we're out of food." I went over and got another line, they were out of food.
We had 10 trucks, and 9 trucks sold out of
everything.
Like 200 crab cakes, 600 pounds of ribs. It was.
And I waited 20 minutes for a beer.
Yeah.
Well, I share Michelle's concern about it. I'm supportive of the recommendation that Jason's made, but it's something to keep an eye on. I hope one rotten apple can spoil the event, and I hope it doesn't happen. But it only takes one situation where somebody has too many, and then we start to get into this. Okay, you're going to have a wristband, and you're only going to be allowed, like, do they do that at the vet, or what's it called, the Lincoln Field? Do they do that? You only can have so many beers.
I don't think so.
They don't do that anymore.
Only Ricky Seller.
So okay, so
They make too much money.
Michelle, go.
Let me just ask a question here. Would it be possible to increase the number of food trucks or beer and wine trucks and keep people from drinking too much by putting the price up?
Potentially. I'd have to talk to the vendors themselves because they're sensitive to price point. I think it was $5 for a beer, which is a nice round number in their eyes. You know, if you come with 10, you get 2 beers, kind of thing. So I think they may want to do that. We might have to reduce the portion that we take then, as they're going to give up a little bit, we give up a little bit.
Reduce the size of the beers.
Yep, easy.
Are you thirsty, John?
Well, I'm saying we could have more trucks there if we were not allowing people to drink too much. And you do that by price, not by cops.
Now, we didn't have, I was there for a good bit of it last year. There wasn't one incident that I was aware of. I don't think we had one incident. So, talking about this, my initial comment was just how big is this event going to become? That what is our community? I mean, that's my question, and it's not to quash things. It's just to start to think about what our community is when we have these events. The recommendation, as I say, I'm amenable to the recommendation for the additional vendors, certainly the food trucks. No question in my mind about that at all. And I hope that there's self-governance. The predominant aspect of this event is family oriented, and just one incident with somebody having too much and knocking over a kid, and then there's this, I don't want to go there because it hasn't happened, and I hope it doesn't happen. But that just And I do agree, the line was too long, and you may end up getting people angry with waiting in line too long. So what the balance is, I don't know, maybe it is kind of a monitor and see how it goes, and hopefully it's another successful event without an incident.
Is that when the curmudgeon was born?
I'll buy into that.
No, I started to be a curmudgeon, when I turned 50, I think particularly, although some people would say it started in parochial school.
Anybody else have any comments? Anybody call the question? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you.
Jason, thanks for your work.
Jason, thank you very much.
And I didn't mention it, but we do the seventh inning, everything gets shut down thing. So the event is from 4 till 8, and we close off alcohol sales at 7. So.
I think the
Glad you said that.
I think the walkaway here, though, Jason, is to be sensitive to what's really going on this year, to make sure that we're not going too far, too fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Bring that back to us.
Good point, Marty. That's a good way to cap it. Okay. So,
All right,
Take care
folks.
of yourself. Enjoy the ride up now.
drive safely.
Okay, we're back to the agenda the way it was written, and the minutes are, I looked at them. I find them okay. I don't think there's any errors. If there are errors, I missed them. But with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of January 6, 2020, January 14, 2020, and the treasurer's report of January 16, 2020.
Oh, wait, hold the treasurer's report out.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
All those, is there any comments or questions? You're holding that one out, just to keep this to minutes. Keep the minutes, Steve. Keep the minutes.
Motion's on it.
So motion on the table.
It was a motion. Mike seconded it.
Consent agenda.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
No questions about it?
It's carried 2 to 1. Still in one, isn't it?
John, it's not a question, it's a motion, it's, you were still referring to it as the sinking fund, is that just you haven't changed the fund?
Where did I see that?
Oh,
I gotta talk to staff about that.
yeah, that's minor, that's why I said that.
Where?
It was on one of the bills we pay.
Oh, yeah, in AMS, the old reprogram. Okay.
You cover all the financials, John? We're good. Any motion?
No, the official was approved.
We're done, good. Okay, moving right along, we're
Thanks,
down
John.
over to, we're gonna move the public hearings to the end. Rick, you wanna give a quick summary on the report on the incident we had last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess?
So we reached out to the county, talked to the chief. The county will not give us the actual tapes. It's their policy is they don't do that. But I did get timelines from the county. And so in response to Mrs. Stoltz's question, she told the county that she saw flames going over the trees. And the dispatcher, their thing was they would not only send her outside, she said that. And they felt, based on what she told them, it was safe to stay in the basement. That's why they told her to stay. In other words, when the call comes in, they don't know whether it's pipeline, brush fire, or whatever. Their comment was it was safer for her to stay if she saw flames coming over the trees. Again, they don't even know what she's telling them. As far as when she called 911, she communicated to them that she was in the basement. And that was communicated to the police officer that, hey, so-and-so called, she's in the basement. But they never connected the fact that they had to go back and tell her. So we talked to the chief, and they developed a protocol when these type of situations happen, that they go back and get back to the people who called 911. There was I guess it's just a miscommunication. The other comment that came up was of lack of emergency response. Based on it, so when a call comes in or a call is dispatched, you get a printout from the county, and it's on a 24-hour clock in seconds. So at 3:10, they dispatched the fire and police for a fire at Gateswood Drive. That was our address. That's where the call came in at. At 3:12, one of our police officers directed traffic. He responded that he was en route. He got a notification 4 minutes later. The deputy chief got there at 3:15. Deputy chief drives a regular Explorer. So at the end of the day, when he got there, he saw there was no fire, talked to Sunoco, he recalled the fire truck. So essentially, the fire truck never got to the scene. So the only evidence there was a police or any type of emergency there was the police car, which was basically there for 8 minutes with its lights on. So if you didn't walk outside in that 8-minute period, you would not know there was an emergency.
I think that Ricky did a good job when somebody did this thing and chasing it down. Also, I think it might be prudent, Rick, if you can, a quick version is send a letter to the lady and tell her what you found and what we learned as a result of that incident. And I think that would be kind of nice.
I think that'd be a nice follow-up. That's good.
And follow up, so we did send letters to Sunoco about the incident. I also sent a letter to the PUC, and surprisingly, we got a call from the lady at the PUC who I met at various pipeline meetings. She said the chairman got your letter, and she wanted to know what's going on. And lo and behold, today we got a letter back from the PUC acknowledging receipt of my letter. And I mean, it's kind of amazing. My letter was dated like the 10th, and today's anyway. They're aware of it.
They know we're here.
His letter did get attention and it was a response, but the response was pretty shallow. I saw the letter, but that's there, here, there. Okay, we don't need to take any motions there. We got rid of the noise ordinance. We will follow that sooner or later. We will come back to it. Regarding the tax collector, we need to appoint Julio Peruto. Did I pronounce that right?
Perella. He's
He's
like
a
the
good
tour
guy.
company, but he's no relation.
He'll do a good job. Is there a motion to
And
that
we're going
effect?
to Italy for 2 weeks.
Does everybody want to make a motion to that effect with Julio? Julio. The chairman makes a motion to appoint Leo to the director, to the job of the tax collector.
I'll second it.
How many questions from the board, from the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We're at.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we change Julio's name to Julio.
I second the motion.
I tried to, but it didn't work. I used to be on that committee, it didn't work then either. We took care of the community day, that's done. We took care of one of the bills, took care of 12C. Ricky, you want to talk about 12D?
Mark needs to replace the skid steer and the milling head, which they use for milling paving. So we spent $4,000 on December to get it up and running. We probably should, if we want to keep it, we would have done the other side because the right side, the left side, this way it's wore out. And the recommendation is to purchase a new one from Foley Cat. It's under Coast Guard, still gives a $23,000 discount and $69,000, and it's depreciated in the fund.
Is it all depreciated?
Yeah, it's a 10-year asset, Marie. It's a 2009, it's a 10-year asset. It's fully depreciated. We budgeted $86,000 for it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, $72,000
Yeah,
for it. We're coming in under budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be able to sell, are we gonna be able to sell the old one?
Yeah, so this is net of trade, and whenever we purchase an asset, the board has to, in its motion, it has to indicate how it's going to dispose of the old asset. So in the motion, it says net of trade, so.
We'll trade this in and don't give us.
Right, and so, but it's important that you say net of trade in, so to indicate that you're authorizing that disposal of the asset.
Is it fair to say that this new skid steer is going to get a real workout as we start to develop the trail?
No, we
because
use it just for regular.
The trail was bid out.
Oh, so that's all,
Yeah.
it's not any of our equipment that we do? Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah. But I know it's a very well-used piece of equipment in most of our, public works, local governments. So, yeah, it's a good piece of equipment.
That provided some serious communication with us, correspondence with respect to the
We still need that.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Mr. Chair, I'd recommend the board approve purchasing the Foley Cat Model 272D3 XE skid steer from Foley Cat. The amount of $69,000 net of trade in the and of the 2009 Case 450 skid steer.
I'd second that.
Comments from the board, from the audience, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Next, John would like to make some amendments to the personnel manual. Go ahead, John.
Give me 1 second. So, without getting into any HIPAA violations here, we did realize about a month ago, we had a situation where a employee's loved ones needed serious medical attention. We didn't have a formal leave donation policy as many organizations do. Just a little bit of background here, the sick leave policy in the personnel manual doesn't really allow you to use sick leave to care for loved ones. So you can take a day off to care for your kid. But long-term care, there's no provision to use sick leave. The employee involved here was relatively new, didn't have a whole lot of sick leave, didn't have a whole lot of vacation or personal leave left. And so basically Rick used some authority delegated him in the personnel manual to create a sick leave or a donation leave policy so this employee could spend time with his loved ones during this family emergency. So basically the first amendment would be basically to codify that a donation leave policy would be allowed. Put in some kind of protections here. No employee can donate more than 160 hours of leave, or that an employee eligible for the donation leave cannot receive more than 160 hours of leave in a calendar year, so that they can't sort of milk the system. And then the employees who donated should forfeit any future claim to it. And then once that employee comes back from the FMLA, any donated leave that was unused would be forfeited as well. So that's the first provision. The second provision is just this thing that's been nagging me for a while. There's a provision that allows employees who don't take any sick leave in a given year to get either a extra personal day or an extra day of pay at their discretion. They can choose which one they want. It's a practical matter. The only people who ever get it are me, Mark Gordon, and Rick. So it's not really the intent of the sick leave policy isn't really being realized. Mm-hmm. So what I would suggest is if the board wants to keep it in there, that it exempts employees from being able to take advantage of it.
For some reason, I thought about this one a lot. And I understand what you're saying, John. A forensic analysis, I guess, could be made to determine why the hourlies don't.
No, it's because Rick and Mark and I, we go to attend night meetings, so we might work, 5 hours at night, and so we go to a doctor's appointment.
What I was going to say is, I think you guys work more than you get paid for, and so forth and so on. I don't see any reason to not allow you. If you show up every day to work and have no sick time, to me.
But that's the point. We do take sick time. We go to doctor's appointments. We go to guest appointments just because we worked, that extra 5 hours. We don't have to take it.
We don't have to use PTO.
I'm agreeing with you, John. I'm agreeing with you with respect to the non-exempt, but I think at the same time, the exempt should not be prevented from doing that. To me, it's if they do that and they don't miss any work, God bless them.
I kind of agree. How many days is it?
Just one day.
One day.
One day.
Keep it.
You only get 5 guys.
Keep it.
So 6 guys right now.
Okay.
I think you should keep it.
Yeah, me too.
So the first one. So the motion is that we.
Can I'd like a little clarification on the FMLA. So, is there gonna be a bank created then, and an employee, if they wish to, they can donate 4 hours or 8 or 12 or whatever they wanna donate? Now, will that stay in there? So let's just say on January the 2nd, a handful of employees actually put their time in the bank. Is that there for just a collective, anybody can use it, or just in the time of need?
No, it would be only for employees eligible for FMLA. So
in the time of need.
Yeah, in the time of
so
need. It
in time
wouldn't
of
just be like, oh, I know I'm gonna have extra time, so I'm gonna donate it. It's gonna be more like Bobby needs.
Bobby needs time, so
Yes.
I'm gonna give him, and is there a cap on the number of days that, or
Well,
hours that an
hundreds.
employee can add to the fund?
160.
One employee can donate how much?
Well, one employee can receive a maximum. Under this proposal, there's no real reason here. I just didn't want it to be like this never-ending thing that something
Right.
can stay out forever.
Sure.
But an employee who is on FMLA
Right.
could get a maximum
Of
of
160, I
So
understand that.
that's.
But how much time can I donate to you if you
Well,
need the time?
theoretically, 160. So one person can donate 160, or two people can donate 80, or four people can donate 40.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Any combination up to 160.
I'm just curious on the one provision that if, Joe or Jane, is the recipient of this goodwill and this time, and, their event is taken care of before they use all of the time. I thought I heard that, any unused time would then just be, forfeited. Wouldn't it be, doesn't it seem fair to, if it wasn't used, to return it back either to the bank or back to the individual who donated it? I'm just curious, maybe it's created an administrative nightmare, I don't know.
No, I don't think it's an administrative nightmare. It's, I just wanted safeguards to make sure that it wasn't abused. That's the whole logic.
Right.
So, FMLA provides for 12 weeks of unpaid leave to cover these kind of situations. If you have an employee who's been here for, 3 years or something, they might not have a whole lot of, accumulated leave that they can use to offset that unpaid period. This is just basically another month of paid leave that they can take during that FMLA year.
What's the, I've lost track, what's the threshold for requiring to have a family leave? Is it 100 employees or is it 50? It is 50.
But we have an FMLA policy in our personnel manual that's consistent
With
as if we had them.
Okay, it's all positive, because I appreciate the work on it.
The next item is,
Need a motion to.
So the motion will be to just do number one.
motion is to let everybody have this.
You want to do them,
The motion, what I said, I thought I agreed to, was to have the exempt and the non-exempt both have
right,
a day if they,
right, so,
Yes.
but John had changed. So you're suggesting that we only do one, which is that we can do the donated leave, we're not gonna change the sick leave policy.
So the motion would be, Mr. Chairman, I move that we add section 4-8-D, subparagraph 4 to the East Goshen Township Personnel Manual, authorizing the township manager to permit employees to donate unused vacation and personal leave to employees eligible for family and medical leave. Here.
is there a second?
Second.
Comments? Floor? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, we're over to Mike. We're over to, do we need to do anything with code of ethics? Now, I would like to think we don't. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't. That just means that I don't think we should do. That I think we're better than that. But at the same time, the question becomes is it to our advantage as, I guess, managers of the personnel, if you will, and to say that we should have a policy that's similar to what East Wetland, or East Bradford has?
I've served on a number of nonprofit organizations, and every one of them requires me to sign a conflict of interest statement or a code of ethics statement.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct. I don't really have a problem with it. The other thing I like about it is it's informative to people who just may not know.
Right.
So they have to kind of read it and sign off on it.
It's a reminder each year,
Yeah.
too, it refreshes, I mean, I'm nonplussed, I forget, John, how did I
Forward this to you, and somehow we had a conversation, and I said, well, this is what East Bradford does, and I forget what prompted us to, did I stimulate that and say, I think I forget.
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Thank you for, I'm just.
So right now, all employees, this isn't ABCs or board members, but we're covered by the employee manual. When we, as a condition of employment, we have to abide, we sign our name to abide by the personnel manual and depending on the topic, for example, the harassment, policy, every couple of years, we require that everybody agree, re-sign that. But as far as these, these specific things about, not accepting gifts, I mean, that certainly managers remind staff about this all the time, but not formally on a calendar basis. So,
Do we want to plagiarize these Bradfords?
well, we haven't exactly plagiarized it. I simplified some of Mike's language, and I took out some of the,
There's only 20 pages long.
and we took out some of the, I think, some provisions, but it's basically
It's an earlier stage of my writing.
Well, I do have a couple of questions. So, are we entertaining questions at this point about it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So, in the Code of Ethics, A2, it says that no supervisor and so on can solicit or accept directly or indirectly any gift. And then on the next page, under guidelines, under A9, it says, refuse personal gifts, nominal token gifts, including holiday food baskets may be accepted. I'd like there to be consistency, and I think that there needs to be a de minimis number. I think I'd like to say maybe, let's not have there be any inconsistencies in here, and maybe a nominal fee of a nominal number of like maybe $30 or less would be acceptable, or some such number that we could consider together.
yeah, in there just because at Christmas time we get,
Sure.
like all the,
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, some of them might be over 30, but I mean, the idea is.
But they come to East Coast Township.
Yeah, they're not
They're not going to an individual.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be an
So
issue.
nominal token gifts.
Nominal, but we have to have a dollar amount listed in
Nominal
there.
token gifts, well, we shouldn't accept any.
I think you're better off with zero.
What?
Zero.
Well, I think that it's difficult when you have someone drop off, cookies, a cookie tray for the works crew because they do such a great job. And
But if they do it collectively, it's one thing, it's collective. But when you're an individual, and I've seen it
I
happen.
agree.
It's not happened by me, but I know that it's happened, where people feel that you can go to a Phillies game or an Eagles game and sit in the skybox and you can enjoy yourself. There's food, there's beverages, the whole thing. To me, that's a gift.
Right.
It is.
Yeah, I agree. That is a gift.
And the people, and there's multiple people, they do not feel that that's a gift.
Well,
and I think it's wrong, and I think you're much better off having a no gift policy.
Well, so why don't we just, I think the issue though with this nominal token gifts is, that we say that are intended for.
An individual?
That are intended for, that are not intended for a specific individual, but a large group of.
I would argue that language on A2 says that might reasonably tend to influence that official in the discharge of the duties of office or appointment. I kind of think that's reasonable enough, because, somebody brings us cookies or.
Okay, you make a point, but if I go to the Eagles game and I say to you, David, it didn't influence me at all, how much liquor can I drink and then speak?
Did it influence you?
Not a bit. We lost the game.
But for example, I'll give you an example. Aqua.
Yeah.
As a golf outing. We get invited to the golf outing. We go play golf.
And that's a gift.
We don't pay a greens fee. I don't think I would make a decision to favor Aqua because I played poorly in the golf outing.
Well,
Which is likely to happen.
I would disagree because I think that that's a vendor of sorts, and I think that we need to be mindful of that.
So, but I think this issue of distinguishing between gifts to individuals versus gifts to.
I think that would suffice.
That's kind of what we
That
want.
would suffice. Okay.
At 9, I would suggest then we start out with the words individual should before refuse personal gifts and stuff like that.
Individuals should.
I'm talking about guidelines and then number 9.
Or actually will refuse, not should.
Will refuse. That's-
Shall
yeah,
is the
that
word.
would be acceptable to me too, yeah.
Because in the personnel manual on page 11, it says no gifts of any sort. So I like the way that will add, that will be satisfactory to me. However, so what if a vendor invites us to a holiday party then? I mean.
Well, here's an example, Michelle. David was just saying when we go to the PSTATS conference.
Right.
For instance, Panoni has an open, they have a large open party, which is very nice that their clients are invited to. We're also invited to dinner by our solicitor. And it's not just the supervisors from East Goshen, but it was whoever their other clients are. So we may be with West Goshen and a number of supervisors. So we have dinner with, let's see, we've had dinner in the past with Kristen and West Goshen, and West Goshen as well.
So, but it's hosted by a vendor.
Yeah.
So it's hosted by Brian Buckley or Panoni. And so really that's kind of an influential thing. So I would say we need to be mindful how we move forward on that.
They're available to everybody that's there. Those kind of things are not, I don't think that they're what you're talking about.
It's a gift. You're right, but at the same time, they don't do that for fun or because they want to spend money.
Right.
They do it because
They're trying to
keep
stay
the
on their
business.
I don't think, I would be surprised if the majority of people in there are going to make a decision because they went to that dinner. It's something that you do. It's something that's almost expected of you do as a client.
Okay.
Well, so
I mean,
Mike,
I don't have a problem. If we're up at, for example, Hershey's a good place to be. I mean, it's an easy example to use. Well, whoever's there, which most of the time is most of us, or all of us, we go out to whomever you're going out to with. You're not an individual buying a favor. It's just not the same thing.
I hear you.
It's part of the job in a way.
I don't want to rain on the parade here. Can I suggest that we maybe table this and think about it a little bit?
And I didn't mean to, I brought this up.
I think it's a great idea.
Just to, and it may not be a code of ethics because we have a state code of ethics that really applies to us.
I think we
That's
gotta change the
important.
name.
So maybe it's a code of conduct. It would be a better word. I was talking to Mandy about that today and she said, yeah,
I
code
think
of conduct.
you're right.
I think it's a great idea. I still think that we should have a code of conduct, code of ethics. I'm required to sign it in healthcare as well.
Well, frankly, when I think of these group events, if you will, when we're PSTATs and we have our solicitor, we see that and they invite us to dinner. I personally distinguish that from an individual gift. Where you say, Mike, we've got 2 great flyers, tickets for you.
Yeah, right.
And it's down in, or it's up in New York. So we have got a room for you for the night, and you enjoy these 2 tickets, and it'd be great to have you as our guest type of thing. That I would feel real uncomfortable about.
I agree with you.
When you start to have a client relationship and they've invited the whole board on an annual kind of event, to me, that's not influence. It's in some respects, obviously, would they spend it otherwise? Maybe not, but they're thanking you, obviously, for your patronage and their appointment. But I think that, I don't think they have expectations that that's going to be influential, but I'm looking at that as a group setting rather than an individual being singled out and saying, Marty, got a great, great sports event. I'd love to send you down to the Super Bowl.
but typically those events are where we get to talk to our neighbors, who we have a relationship with the sewers and all the other stuff. And that's the main reason to go, so you can talk to your neighbors.
Well, there's no doubt that interaction is a good social business as you share amongst your colleagues. So, well, but John, as you said, maybe it bears further consideration. But I wasn't necessarily peddling this one way or the other. I just thought it'd be good to air it out and see if it had any resonance here or not.
I think it's a great idea.
Let's go back to the drawing board, maybe, Mike, when you have some chance.
We'll talk.
let's continue to talk with me and Rick and go from there.
Wordsmith and see about some of the, and Michelle and John and Marty gave comments on this, floated by us, and so we can, think about that in the context of what's written and what could be written if we end up taking action on this.
Okay, John, funding for the police building? John has fundamentally looked at all options for doing this, and one of which is borrow money from ourselves and pay it back at no interest, which is fundamentally, in my opinion, the best way of doing it, because we have the money to do it, and it's not gonna cost us anything to do it, we're gonna pay ourselves back. John, if you wanna explain all the alternatives, that's fine. I'm comfortable. I personally am comfortable with what you recommended, and I thought this is the way to go anyway.
First of all, is it clear, before we go into that, is it clear to all the board what happened here and why a roof contract cost $453,000? That was, unfortunately unavoidable because of the original construction of the police building roof. So it's a metal roof on a very poorly sloped and poorly designed roof, hence the price. And there was not enough money in any capital reserve, like police commission capital reserve, to cover this much higher than expected cost. So I did look around for bank loans, either issued by us, or Westtown, by the police commission couldn't issue a bank loan because they don't have direct taxing authority. And I got a rate of 2.85% for 10 years. But that would also involve, we have to hire a bond counsel and go through DCD review, which would slow down the process. At the end of the day, the capital reserve fund still has about $800,000 extra in it. When I say extra, I mean the accumulated depreciation of all the assets versus the fund balance. The fund balance is about $800,000 higher than the accumulated depreciation. So what I'm suggesting to you is we just take the money out of the capital reserve fund and starting in 2021, we repay ourselves back over the course of at 0% interest over the course of 10 years. The reason I suggest 0% interest is because there's already extra money in that capital reserve fund.
And this will make it now, the people that will benefit, means the future people, or going forward, will pay for it. So it's consistent. At the end of 10 years, we'll be made whole.
So John just asked, do we depreciate the roof? And the answer to that is the police commission does, and they were depreciating it, but based on the assumption that it would be like a $40,000 asphalt shingle regular job. Nobody anticipated it would be 11 times.
So on the commission's list for next year will be to revisit the capital reserve account to see if the assumptions that we made when we started 8 or 9 years ago are still valid. So that'll be something that the commission has to tackle in 2020.
That capital reserve, is that part of the money that makes 1.71% interest?
No, it's not. That's money that's managed by the police commission. I don't know off the top of my head.
But
it's not inflated. It's in Key Bank. I don't know exactly how she has it invested, but
not much more.
Yeah.
But
So
she's restricted to this. She's restricted to the funds that she puts in.
Okay, well, my point is if we're only getting 1.71% and it will cost us 2.85% to borrow the money, then this is a no-brainer, right?
Well, that's true. Let me ask a couple questions. First of all, and maybe my memory needs to be refreshed, how bad are the roof leaks presently?
Right now, there's plywood with blue tar.
Okay. I know this was discussed previously, and again, I'm saying some of this for John and Michelle's knowledge-based building. To replace the roof with shingles, traditional shingles that's on there now. I recognize there's some of the structural and some of the dynamics of the roof pitches, et cetera. But we did get a price for shingles, didn't we? As to how much it would be for the shingles?
The engineer estimated the shingles would cost about $300,000. Metal roof. Now, put in perspective, we reshingled the roof here for about $50,000. So the police station is not that much bigger.
Yeah.
So it's possibly could have been less than $100,000.
Yeah.
However, the building was built in 2005. They started experiencing roof leaks in 2011. So we only got six years out before it started leaking.
Okay, so if the metal roof, we expect a life of 30 years?
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it would be a 30-year. Yeah.
So 30 years, 50,000, well, we couldn't do shingles for 50,000 probably. The number is just astronomical to me, and I will tell you, and I know this is gonna drive you crazy, it's probably gonna drive John really crazy. I'm not inclined to repair this roof until we see what the police arbitration settles out. And I know that's an emotional residue that I had. We were this close, and over 1% of contribution to the health plan, they walked away from the table, and you know what? If the roof leaks for a while and we get through arbitration, so be it. That's how I feel. I'm sorry.
No, I understand that.
I'm emotional about it.
Two points. The police commission has already awarded the bid. So
We don't have a choice.
yeah.
So what are we, we're just looking at finding how we're gonna finance it.
And I'm not sure, I mean, letting the roof, I mean, what purpose does that serve?
Well, that's right, that's why I said it's emotional. Well, then in that case, for the 453, what would be wrong to just use some of our fund balance and just pay it down and get it out of the way?
Because historically, the board has always had a philosophy that if we're paying for something that benefits people in the future, they should bear the cost of it. And so if we, like when we go out and we borrow money for something, the people that are gonna benefit from that pay for it. We wouldn't necessarily take, cash reserves and go buy a dump truck. You save up, depreciate it. And then using that same philosophy, they felt that if we had to replace the roof, the people going forward should pay for it. It shouldn't come from the people that, had collected the money in the first place. That's why as John suggested, we're put in a line item in the budget. It'll be an expense of $24,000 a year for the next 10 years. That'll be charged to the police, and it's the cost of replacing the roof.
All right, I've calmed down, I'll let it go.
I'd like to know though, moving forward, when do we have to start planning for another new roof?
Well, what we're going to do, the commission's going to do is, we're going to go back and we have a capital reserve account that's split between the two capitals. We each put money into it. We have a number of things in it, the roof being one of them. We're going to go back and revisit that. And obviously we will now we know, factor in the new roof. We'll also look at the HVAC and some of the other components in there to see if the assumptions that we made when we created it were still valid.
Okay.
Is that what you were asking?
That's.
Yeah.
We have a 30-year warranty then?
I don't say yes.
Okay, but
How do they repair?
I'm good with that.
How do they repair a metal roof if we need to repair it?
Take the panels off individually
Okay,
and
okay.
the way they lock in one at a time.
Perfect.
Okay, anybody else? All those in favor of the motion?
Was there a motion?
I thought there was a motion. We took it.
In the interest
You wanna make a motion?
of learning and appreciating, I will make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to move we adopt the attached resolution authorizing payment of approximately $238,000 for half of the contract costs and associated engineering inspection fees of the metal roof of the West County East Goshen Police Building, and repay the capital reserve fund annually from the general fund over 10 years as part of the year-end transfers beginning in 2021.
I'll second.
Comments from the board or the audience? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Mr. Great, sir. Mr. Great, sir.
Great Oak Circle is, PennDOT wants confirmation that the board has been maintaining the road with township funds for at least 21 years. And we took it over in 1998. And
What the hell is it?
It's a small street, about 300 feet long off of Morrison Road.
Barely qualified, right?
Yes.
250 is.
Oh, that's really good.
Mr. Chairman, move that we would execute the certification request by PennDOT for Great Oak Circle as recommended by the township manager.
Second motion.
Anybody got any comments out there? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
You're there, ready to go.
That means we weren't getting liquid fuels for that, now we will.
The trenching, we're trenching insurance stress.
This is a replace.
That's for replacing.
I knew I said that. I talked to Ricky about this, I talked to Mark about it, and they say it's definitely needed.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Is there value, I'm not sure whether I read it or forget, in the memo, is there value in the old ones that we're replacing?
Well, we're trading them in. I mean, the issue is that, so, the original ones are from 96, and then we got like a third of them replaced in 2013, but the vendors that we purchased them from have now up and gone out of business, so we have no way of servicing them. They need repairs, and we can't get them repaired.
Yeah.
And so, one of the nuances that in the memo is that because we the original struts weren't on the depreciation, weren't on the fixed asset list, we weren't depreciating them. So basically, but the new ones were, but only $3,000 of them had been fully depreciated. So this is basically, we'll treat some of it as a new asset and some of it as a replacement asset.
Glad to know you.
Okay. Well,
Who wants to make the motion? Anybody?
I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of trench shoring struts, net of trade-in from Continental Fire and Safety Supply for $25,726.30, with $3,000 treated as a replacement asset and the remaining $22,726.30 as a new asset.
I'll second.
Comments or questions of John? I assume we're going to set up a new, for the stretch, we'll set up a new depreciation schedule.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's like,
I have a question. Do we know how long Continental Fire and Safety Supply has been in business?
I mean, Mike, that's actually very valid. I mean, as I point out, there's only one vendor in 200 miles from here that sells these things, so that's a very valid concern.
I mean, I'll put it this way, I hope they're gonna be around so that one breaks or.
Is it trying? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's, I don't want to buy an extra. Well, there's a favor of the motion.
We're waiting for an all in favor. I had a question after the motion was seconded.
All in favor.
All in favor?
We're in that part, Mike.
We're at that part, Mike. All in favor, you would say.
Yes, I said that.
Yeah, so we're supposed to vote now.
Aye.
Aye.
Only twice.
I'll tell you, Mike, you stay past 6:30, it's a tough night.
I tell you, after night, nothing good happens.
I agree with
I'm
that.
telling you.
Okay, folks. Jay is really right up your alley, Mike. We've got to talk about the dam.
Ooh.
A lot of money.
Ooh.
Rick,
Yeah,
you
I
wanna
got
talk about
comments
what's going on? I don't think we're gonna, tell us fellas and ladies, I do not think that we have a choice here.
Well, that
That may be, but I'm gonna say it again for the public's benefit. We have, we didn't go out we don't have competitive bids on these. I know the internal aspects of Gannett Fleming doing a lot of work for us, and they've got all the information from the prior work that's been done. But when I see these numbers, it just, and I know, and I appreciate the one is a fixed number, shall not exceed 187.
Well, no,
That's for Hershey's Mill Dam.
on this one, the 86 is fixed. The other is based on how many construction meetings we have and how much time we spend inspecting the site.
Are we talking about two different things here?
Two different dams.
We're two different.
Are we talking first
This
about
one,
Hershey Mill?
this one is Hershey Mill Dam.
Hershey's Mill.
The Hershey Mill Dam?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been involved in this all the way through, and the problem that we face is, Gannett Fleming is really good.
I know.
And even if you didn't get the lowest price, you're going to probably in the long run be better off by using them. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not right, Mike, because I'm a great proponent of getting this.
I know you are.
And the problem is, in this one now, you're in a different environment. You don't got a lot of.
This is very specialized.
It is. I would be a little bit afraid of changing horses in the middle of the street.
I recognize, and it's as you say, Marty, it just, it's a lot of money. And it is, and they haven't done us a disservice, they've done good work, and I know there are specialized firms, specialized work. It's just, we're in this public environment, and I just feel, and I know professional service contracts, we don't have to bid them. That's not, we're exempted from those kind of services, to have to go out for bids, but, it just gives me that pause every time, so I apologize for bringing it up.
I think you're right. I'm reluctant to do it for all the reasons we said. I just think you need them. They're so good at what they do. They've been right on the money with the time and everything else that they've done for us. And it's been amazing. And John, you got this number factored into your bond number, right?
Correct, yeah, both this and also there's an assumption that the Milltown number will come back higher, higher than this by a factor of, 50% too.
So John's really got, still have some extra money in the bond fund, so my God, I'm with you, but I just don't see how we can do it in this case.
And that's the, the pause that I have that causes me to stutter on it, because I recognize there's really not another one, but Michelle. Go ahead.
I'm 100% with you. I'm really reluctant to award any contract that has not been put out for bid.
Oh, yeah.
It's
But
public
Michelle,
money.
you gotta look, one thing you should know, this thing has been going
I know.
on since 2006.
Well, I think we all feel that sense. We know that Rick and John have done, good work to discuss this with Gannett Fleming. They came through their numbers. So
it's a hard decision.
It's fairness to all you guys, I'll be fine here. The chair puts a motion on the floor to accept the January 16th, 2020 proposal for construction services related to the Hersheyville Dam project from Gannett Fleming with the condition that the fee shall not exceed $187,040 without prior approval to the township. For a second?
I'll second.
Is there any other comments from anyone from the floor?
Mayor, I'd like to ask a question relative to without prior approval from the township. So didn't we have a situation last year with, I think it was the Hershey's Mill project, where the Army Corps came back and said, no, you got a wetland there now, you're gonna have to redesign it.
Yep.
So that's an example of something that the external agency
forces, yeah.
could, so just so you know that, John and Michelle, last year we had one of these situations where the most ridiculous thing in the world, the Army Corps says, well, now they drained the pond, but now you got a wetland, so you're gonna have to redesign. It's kind of like, what? And that was $43,000 or something.
Somewhere's in there.
Something. So that's a potential that the Army Corps could come in during this process and say, oh, our standards are changed, you're gonna have to do X, Y, Z, and we won't have much of a choice. But to comply with that, in order to comply, we're gonna have to use Gannett Fleming for some additional change order approval.
The thing that.
I just wanted to bring that up for you guys.
Mike's is right. And the thing is, that we had through DEP, which they're part of, in terms of the process, we had told them and showed them what we were doing. And then all of a sudden, they decided that we created these wetlands.
DEP was okay with it.
I know.
But there's joint responsibility for wetlands, and
There was a big discussion here as to what in the hell, why did they tell us right in the beginning that we had to spend this money rather than wait until the end? Because
Let me ask the obvious question then. Can this happen to us again?
Yes.
In Hershey's Mill?
well, no, we've
Not
got
Hershey's Mill, it can in the other one.
Now, well, the other one, we had a pre-application meeting, and we had the Army Corps guy there, and he went down, he was okay with Milltown, because Milltown, we just drained it within the last year or so. Hershey's Mill been drained for 6 or 7 years, and his position was, well, the existing condition is no longer an impoundment, it's a wetland. And there was no way we could get around it because it has been drained for 6 feet.
I see. Okay,
So-
I'm good.
Before we go ahead with this, I'd like to know if, the board would be willing to entertain, shall not exceed, this amount,
What about
this
that?
huge amount, unless the scope of the project changes.
That's a good question, Michelle.
So
The
I,
problem's going to be, if you got a vendor on the other end, you can ask, but you may not receive. He may not want to lock it in.
Well, no,
The way it's written now, you come back and ask for more money.
right now, we have 482 hours of inspection time. There's so many hours for Gannett Fleming to find the rocks, set the rocks, to landscaping and inspection. So,
That's a guess.
and then we worked on, there would be soon to be 10 construction meetings, I believe it's every other week. So worst case, the contractor is totally incompetent. And it runs longer, so that would be the only reason why we would end up going forward. We would need more money for the inspection because of the contractors.
You feel confident that this will be okay?
All I know is, before this, the board went out to a number of different engineers for this project over the time. It was almost like engineer of the month. And we spent time with this engineer, went down that path, this engineer went that path. And we went out and solicited proposals to pick an engineer to take his project from start to finish, and Gannett Fleming was his best one to feedback with.
Can I make the motion then?
We already have a move.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm starting to.
You're starting to like me.
It's affecting all of us, John. It's affecting all of
That's
us.
why we want youth on this board.
And I'm not on medication. All right, let's vote.
You need that family leave for the kick in?
Yeah.
What the hell, where
Aye,
are we?
yes, aye.
My hand is up.
Oh,
You made the motion, David seconded it, and she.
I'm gonna say nay.
Okay.
What do you say, no?
I'm saying nay, yeah,
It's a
thank you.
little different.
4-1, John.
I just just have a hard time with that number and not going out to bid. And,
I can't argue with you. You said,
How about the next
you
one?
said, I want to get it done. It's like Sunoco, man, get it done.
Okay, we getting close?
I don't know if you're gonna spend more money again on the Milltown Dam.
So this goes back to Milltown, and essentially as part of the project, we need a letter that demonstrates that the project is in compliance with our local floodplain or management ordinance. The fact that we're putting parking in the floodplain is prohibited in our floodplain ordinance. We need to, so accordingly, we need to provide documentation to FEMA to amend the floodplain map to show that when the project's done, the parking will not be in the flood.
When I retire, I want to get a job writing a letter for $47,000.
Well, no, is you have to do the hydraulic study and then tie it back in. Yes, and this is, and this is, I mean, I'm not off the clearance. If we were just breaching the dam, we wouldn't have this problem.
That's right.
But the board made a commitment that we're going to improve these and make them into parks. In order to have a park, you need to have parking. And in order to put the parking in, the only place to put it is in the impoundment. So we're sort of stuck.
And is this considered within our scope of funding?
Yeah, John factored us in.
Smart, okay.
Good, John. Is there a motion to accept this?
I want to get the.
I got it. I move that we accept the January 16, 2020 proposal from Gannett Fleming to prepare the FEMA conditional letter of map revision with the condition that the fee shall not exceed $47,100 without the prior approval of the township.
I'll second that.
How much are questions from the board? From the audience?
I'm actually gonna say again, this is one of these things where I feel like we need to cap it at $47,100. I think that we should be able to cap it at that point and not have to have them coming back to us for more, for approval for more.
Just,
That's
that
how I
would be
feel
a
about that.
friendly amendment. You
no,
would
no,
ask.
no, I'm not making an amendment.
I'm just
No, it's 4-1
saying.
last time, it can be 4-1 this time.
Exactly.
I will say this, be careful how often you use that, because if you use the not to exceed number, you'll find that the price goes up.
Okay, fair enough,
And it may well be that you don't want the price to go up because they may do it for the lower number.
fair enough.
So you gotta be really careful about when you do that and when you, because you run into that problem.
Okay, fair enough. Mm-hmm.
All right, there's a second. Motion and a second, motion John, second Mike.
All those in favor of the motion?
And nay.
4-1.
Thanks.
But there is a problem with that, doing that because you can get very trapped.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, I'll make a motion to
All right,
adjourn.
the executive order thing is what we already have done.
Yep.
So that is finished for the moment.
Yes, yes,
So we got the dam and we got the 2 dams done.
yes,
We're heading over to the second phase.
Yes.
We got the first part done. We got-
Yes.
Anybody have any other matter?
no,
There's no public comment, right? Do we, you here for anything? Good.
Do you have any other matters, John?
No order, so there's, we got a few correspondence pieces. We got the end of the year report from Jason. We got a letter from Penn Medicine on the visiting the houses.
visiting nurses,
We got the DEP 102 notice from Bow Tree 1 project. The same thing with respect to the 105 notice from PES baseline installation on Wilson Drive. I assume that's if you attend to that new property, is that right?
I'm not sure, yes, but they issued a CO for the daycare Friday, so it's, they had gas, I'm not sure.
Let me just be clear on the Penn Medicine at Home letter. It's dated December 31st, and they were asking for a contribution and through our 2020 budget.
Correct. Well, no, it was actually through our 2019 budget. But I've been bugging them for 6 weeks to get me a letter. They got it like the day before, on like December 31st. It didn't make it into the packet last time. We did approve a check, though. The board did approve a check, like the annual $6,000 contribution to the visiting nurses.
Which is what we do.
Yeah, but technically they need to write a letter requesting the money, and it's a little late, but
Now, we do one of these, Bradford, most municipalities contribute to the visiting nurses, service, so.
We also got chapter 102 and 105 notice for the Hilltop Dam project.
yeah,
And last but not least, we
Yes.
got the 102 notification letter
yes,
for Adelphia Gateway.
yes.
So that, now you can count that as an extra pipeline.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Ricky, I don't know, we can't adjourn. Yeah, we can adjourn from here to go back in the back to sign letters and stuff.
Just a record note that 9:17, and the calendar says 9:15.
Excellent.
Not bad, not
Hey,
bad.
don't-
Excellent job.
Nicely done.
All those in favor?
Aye. John, you wanna vote on that? Aye. David made the motion, I seconded it.
All right, good.
We're cool.
Okay.
Okay.
So David. Let me show you my transcription.
Oh,
Okay,
jeez.
so David, before we go ahead and do this, let me show you one more problem.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Yep.
What do you know?
I needed this. You know, I did for you.
Are you okay? I sent you an email. Are you okay?
Oh, I see.
Oh, look, check your email.
Gentlemen,
Oh, if you did, that's pretty.
you gotta stay in your house.
I'm gonna talk to Susan Newborn, see
You all right?
see if there's a way of doing it. in the-
Hey, Carmen made your room reservation today, Eric. Carmen made your room reservation for George.
Yeah, I know.
And so I
Oh, you know that?
Yeah, I mean, how many?
I tried to do
When
this.
are you guys heading down?
30th. Monday.
So just so you
Night.
know, it's not